Hey guys, so next question that I want to address in the Q&A for this month was a pretty good one we got, and it's asking what's better, going on a cut or possibly a contest prep where you're getting your deficit entirely from doing cardio, or one where you're getting it entirely from food restriction and doing no cardio. Or maybe a more pragmatic question to answer would be eating more food and doing a whole bunch of cardio, or eating less food and just doing a very slight amount of cardio. And what's the best approach? So let's just start out with just trying to get on the same page here. What are the downsides to each? So obviously, eating a lot of food is going to create a more anabolic environment inside the body, in that it's going to support training. It's going to provide more nutrients to sustain repair and growth of muscle tissue, and it's going to provide a more functional hormonal environment and all that sort of thing, and it's going to make you less food focused and all that kind of stuff, or supposedly. But in reality, it's more about the deficit itself. So maybe it doesn't matter, but it does matter, because the downsides of just doing a whole bunch of cardio are that now you're going to end up having to do so much that you're not necessarily a weight training athlete anymore. You're just an endurance athlete who is doing some weight training on the side. And then the question is, well, which one's better or which one's worse? If I'm doing all this cardio, am I going to have more interference, and am I going to be running off all my muscle? Or if I'm not eating enough, am I going to be just starving off all my muscle? Well, let's kind of just clear the whole playing field and get on the same page, because in the end, your body doesn't know it's in a calorie deficit per se. It just knows what it has coming in and what its output is, and then it kind of has this thermostat-like effect of the way it looks at energy balance. Okay, so if you're losing weight, it's going to try to slow down that weight loss. If you're gaining weight, it's going to try to slow down that weight gain. And you can gain weight from moving less and having less of a caloric expenditure, or you can gain weight from eating more past your calorie expenditure, and the same is true the other way. So a deficit is a deficit in many ways. But then that doesn't just mean it doesn't matter. Then we have to think about the practical idea of these two different diets. So if you did a cut, where the approach was, I'm not going to do any cardio whatsoever, and I'm just going to restrict my calories. What will probably happen is that the amount of calories you had to eat would be very, very low, to the point of detriment. And the detriment would come from food focus, not having very good energy levels at the times you might need them, like when you have to train, and in general, feeling hungry. And possibly also some issues with fat mobilization as you get really, really lean, depending on the person. To go to the other extreme, if you were to have an approach where you were entirely just creating your deficit through cardio, I think the person who asked this question may be underestimating how much cardio would be required to create a calorie deficit. So dropping 500 calories per day should result in roughly a pound of weight loss per week. But what would be required to burn a true 500 calories per day over your regular, whatever you'd be expending during that period you were doing your cardio to reach a true deficit is a lot. So let's say you're going really, really hard on your cardio, like every other day, and then every other day besides that you're going more moderate. So one day a week you're burning, let's say, or one every other day period you're burning 10 calories per minute, and the other one you're burning 5 calories per minute. So that means you have to do, to burn, let's say, 500 calories, you'd have to be doing 50 minutes of activity one day, and 100 minutes of activity the other day to get that 500 calorie deficit. So you've got a little over an hour and a half and almost an hour that you're doing pretty much every day of the week to create that 500 calorie deficit, but not actually. Because in that hour and a half and in that 50-minute period that you were doing before you started this cut, you were doing something besides cardio, you were still burning calories. So depending on how active you are, how big you are, and what you're doing, that might be somewhere between maybe 2 to 3 calories per minute. So we'll just say 2. So if you're burning 2 calories per minute, that actually means that you need to do more cardio, because in that hour and a half, you're normally burning 120. So really, you didn't burn 500 calories. You burned 380, more than you normally would. So you'd actually probably have to do another 15, 20 minutes of cardio. So what we're talking about is doing an hour and a half to 2 hours of significant cardio every day to get to the same calorie deficit you could get from simply reducing your calories by 500. So in the end, it's just not practical. And as your metabolic rate slows down, you'll have to do more and more cardio. And it would get to the point where if you actually wanted to get on stage with striated glutes and you're an average person from just doing cardio, by the time you got there, you wouldn't look like you had any muscle, because you'd be having to do probably, I would guess, maybe 4 hours of cardio per day, while making sure that your calories didn't change. And there are some guys who prep for shows who only do 4 hours of weight training per week. So you would be doing 28 hours of cardio and 4 hours of weight training. And then you tell me, do you think you'd look more like an endurance athlete or more like a strength athlete? Especially after 6 months. So certainly one wouldn't want to approach it that way. And on the flip side, you wouldn't want to be eating like a bird by the time you had to get ready. So this is the reason why most preps are a combination of the two. Now, just because they're a combination of the two doesn't mean that they're equal. It just means that you wouldn't want to go to either extreme or neglect one aspect or the other. So Lane Norton had kind of the general recommendation, which I kind of nodded my head when I heard of 20% of your deficit should come from cardio and 80% from food. And I think that's pretty good. One thing I like to see is ideally you should be doing more weight training than you're doing cardio. Now it's going to vary a lot. If you're a slow metabolic, if you have a slow metabolic rate, small body mass, you're probably going to have to do more cardio, and that's just kind of the way of the world. But in the end, I would say enough cardio to get you there to still allow you to eat enough to not feel like you're eating nothing, and then the majority of the restriction should come from food, and then it's just a matter of properly setting up your macros so that you can sustain exercise output, sustain health, and then sustain performance. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and just parrot some other people and recommend that 20% of your deficit from activity and 80% from food. And unless you are someone who has a very slow metabolic rate and is low body mass, and really you need to do that activity so that you can actually eat an appreciable amount of food. So you don't run into like nutritional deficiencies and vitamins and shit like that just from not eating enough. So yeah, that's pretty much it. As with everything, it's almost always a balance. It's not black or white, and you're going to want to fall somewhere in the middle. And as also with everything, it's going to be, your mileage may vary. So if you're not the typical norm, 26-year-old lifter who watches our channel, and you're a small-bodied female or a lightweight competitor or a 55-year-old with a very slow metabolic rate, then you may have to do more cardio. So that's the take-home message. A good balance, mostly the deficit, and as much cardio as it needs to get done. And try to find a weight loss rate somewhere between 0.5 to 1% per week, and probably higher, 1% per week when you've got a lot more fat to lose, and closer to 0.5% when you are getting really lean. Okay? So talk to you guys next time, and thanks a lot for watching.